Hi friends! Mr. Putter and Tabby had lots of adventures together and more than what I had here at home. And this is my last one that I have at home. Mr. Putter and Tabby toot the horn. There's Mr. Putter tooting his horn. Mr. Putter and Tabby toot the horn. I think Tabby was woken up by surprise. This has 5 chapters. Loud music, tough teeth, Mr. Putter can't, Mr. Putter tries, and the band. And there's Zeke. Loud music. Mr. Putter and his fine cat Tabby were neighbors to Mrs. Teaberry and her good dog Zeke. Mrs. Teaberry and Mr. Putter had a lot in common. They both liked bingo. They both liked free samples. This says try a berry. They both liked rain. And they both liked music. Mrs. Teaberry liked country music the best. She liked the broken hearts. She liked the big silver boots and the tall hair. Mr. Putter liked opera. He also liked broken hearts. And he liked the big round heroes and the violins. Some days, Mrs. Teaberry would play her country music very loud for Mr. Putter to hear. Some days, Mr. Putter would play his opera very loud for Mrs. Teaberry to hear. They liked sharing. One day, Mrs. Teaberry had an idea. "We should join a band," she told Mr. Putter. Mrs. Teaberry always has ideas, doesn't she? Do you get good ideas? What kind of ideas have you gotten this week? Maybe to do an experiment that Miss Kathy put on the YouTube channel? So now Mr. Putter says, "But I can't join a band," said Mr. Putter. "I can't play an instrument." "Of course you can," said Mrs. Teaberry. "Old people can do anything they want." "Can they say they can't play an instrument?" asked Mr. Putter. "No," said Mrs. Teaberry. So she and Mr. Putter went to look for a band. Chapter 2, Tough Teeth. Mr. Putter and Tabby and Mrs. Teaberry and Zeke went to hear many bands play. They went to hear an Irish band play jigs, but the jigging made Tabby nervous and Zeke itch, so they could not play in an Irish band. Next they went to hear a brass band, but the brassy sound made Mrs. Teaberry's teeth hurt, so they could not play in a brass band. Then they went to hear a jazz band. The band played very late in a club, after midnight. Mr. Putter fell asleep. Do you see him? There he is, sleeping right here. So they could not play in a jazz band. The jazz band was just too late at night for them. Poor Mr. Putter and Mrs. Teaberry. It seemed that bands were only for people who had tough teeth and didn't need much sleep. They sat with Tabby and Zeke and wondered what to do. Chapter 3, Mr. Putter Can't. "I have it," said Mrs. Teaberry a few days later. She had brought Mr. Putter and Tabby some peach tea and a carrot pie. "We will be a band." But I still can't play an instrument, said Mr. Putter. Of course you can, said Mrs. Teaberry. I can't, said Mr. Putter. You can if you want to, said Mrs. Teaberry. Putter thought about Tabby's nerves, and Zeke's itch, and Mrs. Teaberry's teeth. He thought about a nap. I'm not sure if I want to, said Mr. Putter. If you try, I will bake you something sweet, said Mrs. Teaberry. Sweet? Said Mr. Putter. Something really nutty, said Mrs. Teaberry. Nutty? Said Mr. Putter. With lots of vanilla, said Mrs. Teaberry. I'm ready to play, said Mr. Putter. She's convincing him to play, isn't she? With something good to eat. Chapter 4. Mr. Putter Tries. The next day, Mr. Putter bought a little horn. He bought it because it was on sale. When he got home, Mr. Putter tooted the horn for 4 hours. He was a very bad tooter, the worst. Tabby went outside to sleep in the ferns. Look at poor Tabby. She ran out. Mrs. Teaberry did not buy a horn to toot. She bought a mandolin. When she got home, she started plucking. She was a good plucker. She plucked all night long, and Zeke did not itch. By the next morning, Mrs. Teaberry could pluck her favorite country songs. But Mr. Putter could not toot his favorite songs. His tutor was holding up a tomato plant. Do you see? You see right there? Chapter 5. The Band. Mrs. Teaberry forgave Mr. Putter for being a bad tutor. She said he could listen to her pluck instead. So he did. He listened to her pluck all the broken-hearted songs she could think of. He liked it very much. Tabby purred. Zeke did not itch. After the concert, they all had a sweet, nutty, vanilla surprise. Mrs. Teaberry said that Mr. Putter deserved it because he had tried. That's what we do at school, too, right? You can't always do something, but if you try, that's good enough. She said she did not mind being the only person in the band. She said the name of her band would be Plucking Without Putter. And they laughed and laughed and laughed. Plucking Without Putter. Oh, and look at the horn. And here they are on the back of Mr. Putter's very cool car. So that's all the Mr. Putter and Tabby stories I have. But I have lots of other books, so I will see you again soon and read some more books. Bye.